We have a need to play a role in our world. We have a need to know about our world. And we're not being treated respectfully. We're being treated as if we're a bunch of dummies. A global perspective, which has a diverse group of contributors around the world. That's going to be great, exciting television.
Markets rallied on Monday after President Bush and Treasury Secretary Paulson announced that they would be committing $20 billion in capital and guaranteeing a record $300 billion in risky assets in order to bail out ailing banking giant Citigroup. On the same day, Barack Obama confirmed the appointments of Tim Geithner to be his Treasury Secretary and Larry Summers to head up his National Economic Council when he takes office in January. The Real News spoke to Timothy Canova, writer and professor of economic law at Chapman University in California, in order to get his reaction to the appointments.
Timothy Geithner has been the president of the New York Federal Reserve Bank for the past couple of years. Prior to that, he had been at the International Monetary Fund for a little while, and prior to that, he had been a Treasury Department career bureaucrat. He had been mentored by Larry Summers, who was just appointed by President-elect Obama to be the chair of the National Economic Council. And Larry Summers, of course, had been a deputy Treasury Secretary under Robert Rubin. And in fact, Larry Summers and Robert Rubin and Alan Greenspan were, you could say, three of a kind. In fact, I have here the Time magazine issue of the three of them on the Committee to Save the World. That's troubling, and it is ironic. I mean, these are figures who, Larry Summers in particular, Timothy Geithner a bit less so, who had really been involved in creating a lot of the conditions that led to this financial crisis, and failure is being rewarded in many ways right now. I'd say among the most significant things that occurred in the late 1990s happened while Robert Rubin was Treasury Secretary, and then his transition to Larry Summers becoming Bill Clinton's Treasury Secretary. And during that period of time, the Glass-Steagall Act had been swept away. The Glass-Steagall Act had been passed in the 1930s to keep commercial banks out of the casino economy, out of Wall Street. And then a year later, in December of 2000, while Larry Summers was the Treasury Secretary, the Clinton administration deregulated derivatives. Derivatives have now become a major part of this financial crisis that we're in. The size of the derivatives market is mind-boggling, and while it sounds great to have insurance, everyone will have insurance on their own home, for instance, these insurance contracts have become so enormous and they've become tradable now that essentially they've become gigantic wagers on the movement of stocks, on bonds, on interest rates, on exchange rates. The size of the credit default swap market alone has been estimated at between $50 and $80 trillion in face value. Then of course, there are exchange rate and interest rate derivatives, which are in the many hundreds of trillions of dollars in face value.
See, those numbers are just getting out of the realm of reason. They just don't seem to have any connection to reality. Like a number like 100 trillion. That's bigger than the world economy.
Well, that is right. And what made it possible was that in December of 2000, Bill Clinton signed away the derivatives market and allowed it to remain deregulated. There's so much uncertainty, not just in the marketplace, but among policymakers, that the longer we wait to impose some type of regulation, not for the sake of regulation, but for the sake of bringing some kind of transparency to the financial system, I think we're in for a long, tough ride.
In Obama's speech today, when he introduced his team, he talked quite a bit about moving in a new direction and reforming the financial system.
I've sought leaders who could offer both sound judgment and fresh thinking, both a depth of experience and a wealth of bold new ideas.
But it appears that he's tapped the architects of the system to do this. Alan Greenspan admitted recently that there was a flaw in his model.
You found a flaw in the reality.
A flaw in the model that I perceived is the critical functioning structure that defines how the world works, so to speak.
In other words, you found that your view of the world, your ideology was not right. It was not working.
Precisely. No, that's precisely the reason I was shocked, because I had been going for 40 years or more with very considerable evidence that it was working exceptionally well.
Is there any evidence to believe that Summers and Geithner have made similar updates to their models and to their ideas?
Well, Larry Summers has been writing pages of the Financial Times of London about the need for fiscal stimulus. However, there's been no mea culpa, no admission of wrongdoing on his part as far as the very significant role he played in deregulating derivatives, in sweeping aside the Glass-Steagall Act. The whole idea that these appointments, Larry Summers and Timothy Geithner in particular, are necessitated because they both have experience, it seems a little bit overblown to make that argument. I mean, there are a lot of other good economists out there who were not implicated in all of this deregulation during the 1990s and the past decade, who have plenty of experience. And one name that comes to mind right away is Joseph Stiglitz. He was the chair of the Council of Economic Advisors under Bill Clinton. He was a chief economist at the World Bank, and he happens to have a Nobel laureate in economics. There's no shortage of very top quality people that have experience that could have been selected. Selecting these two particular figures is somewhat problematic, and I think they both have their work cut out for them.
Endless wars, abuse of powers, declining living standards, and the climate change crisis. The stakes couldn't be greater in the U.S. 2008 presidential elections. And with your help, we're moving our news operation to Washington, D.C., where we'll focus on money and corruption. For example, big oil and arms companies shape American economic and foreign policy with far-reaching effects on the lives of ordinary people. With allies in government, trade unions, the media, and in think tanks, they're a hidden hand that controls the commanding heights of American politics. Taking on the industrial military complex is what real change requires. Even former presidents and high administration officials have said so. But corporate television news treats such positions as marginal. Well, we think it's the decisive issue in the coming presidential elections. Uncompromising journalism requires questioning assumption, interrogating structures of wealth and power. Corporate TV news just won't do it. Only a news organization that's truly independent can tackle such issues with courage and tenacity. And we'll take on corporate TV news live. You'll watch TV news with our panel of writers, journalists, scientists, and historians. You'll be able to join in by phone, webcam, chat. Together, we'll discuss and debate what's the real story and take on the myth and the propaganda. But this is only possible if you support us now. We need to prove that a viewer-funded model works. So if you want the real news, we need you now. Please click on the donate button and give generously. Now's the time to decide if you want the real news to thrive.
Your tax-deductible donation makes it possible. Please contribute at therealnews.com.